Hello friends, thank you for joining me. We are heading out to the garden during the heat of the day, which is something we very much avoid doing. But, oh no. We got the sun hat, so that means we're pretty much invincible. It is about the end of May, so we have definitely gotten into the swing of things here at Tamterra. If you are unaware, our Tamterra Grow series is the playlist on the channel where I share with you the development and work of building out the homestead here on my mother's property, Tamterra. It's 56 acres in the North Okanagan at roughly 2,200 feet in the mountains. If you are subscribed and you watch my videos, I'm sorry for making you listen to that all the time, but it's a commonly asked question. What zone are you in? How many frost-free days do you have? We're quite northern and we live in the mountains, so our last frost date is the last weekend before June, but we usually wait until June, and that is right around now. Oh wow, the chives have so many little pollinators. Oh no, I scared them away. Here, see, let's see. Chives are such a pretty flower. We have a lot of them here in this front garden bed, so allowing some of them to go to flower is totally fine. What do you think of the hottest time of the day, sir? Hey? Do you mind? Or are you sunbathing? I have a video all about oregano, so I'll link to that in the cards. But we have some of our provider bush beans coming up in this garden bed, and Mom has built me a bit of a rabbit protector slash cat protector on these garden beds here, which is very exciting. Hopefully we have some more protection from critters. This is just one of our oregano plants that I'm going to be harvesting from. I'm going to keep this smaller basket for the parsley, I think, so I have them separate. Not that I can't tell them apart, but it's just easier. I go into quite a bit of detail in that other video about what you can use oregano for. Cooking, medicinal, mundane, and magical, as I like to put it. Uses for the plant. You can get a few harvests out of oregano, which is why I'm harvesting it quite young. This stuff I'll be dehydrating in the dehydrator, like I said, and I'll be stripping it off of the stems to do so. In that other video I show you a different technique where you dry them on the stems. Each has pros and cons, and because we have so much oregano, I'll actually end up doing both throughout the season. This first round I'm just going to do in the dehydrator because I want to make sure my dehydrator is full when I run it. And down the road, when the oregano is really, really tall, I'll dehydrate a significant amount of it on stem. I was chatting with Mom today and she said she prefers doing them on stem because you can just put them in stews or roasted vegetables on the stem and you don't have to pick out leaves if you're doing kind of like a roast or something, or a gravy or a sauce. I particularly wanted to do it off stem today because I want to, I think, make some pre-mixed blends where I have oregano and thyme and rosemary for kind of an Italian blend down the road. One oregano plant harvested. We still left quite a bit of greenery, and that will definitely bulk up in the months to come. Oregano is such a staple, and I love growing it because it's one of the few herbs here that is actually a full-on hardy perennial, which means it is just before my last frost date still here, and I'm able to get an initial harvest. That means I can have oregano dehydrated and harvested long before harvest season comes, so I'm not exacerbated with the process yet. It's nice to be able to spread your harvesting and your processing out a little bit. While we're out here, we're actually going to grab some parsley as well. Normally parsley is not a perennial here, but we had a fairly mild winter. So there's quite a few parsleys that came back, and because of that, they're actually starting to bolt now. So I'm going to take off a few of the larger stems and leave some more greenery so that it can continue to grow here, and hopefully it'll extend its life. I have more I need to plant out in the garden already, so this is just, again, like an early producing perennial herb, which is just a special treat because it does not usually overwinter here, so how awesome is that? This oregano bush is quite a bit larger because we haven't been picking off of it. It's a bit farther out in the garden area and not as close to the house. It is a happy camper. Look how big it is there in that corner. I actually created this garden bed last year. It is a no-dig bed just for essentially perennial herbs. I transplanted some valerian, which is starting to flower here. I put valerian in this garden bed this year. There's lovage down there as well, which is a perennial celery of sorts. I have a few echinacea plants, a bunch of volunteer sunflowers, another valerian, and a few intentionally planted yarrow so that I can hopefully harvest it. Yarrow is indigenous to the forest here. That being said, it's usually really small and its flowering window is quite narrow, so I've not had any luck actually harvesting the flowers. So I planted some here where it won't get mowed over or eaten by animals to try my luck with harvesting some yarrow flowers. There we have it, a very full basket of oregano off of 2 plants. Not too shabby. Like I mentioned, we will get another harvest off of both of those plants, and to be honest, it'll probably be an even larger harvest. So if you're looking for perennials, get yourself some oregano. This is a whole other section of parsley, curly leaf Italian parsley, that somehow, miraculously, overwintered, and as you can see, some of these stems are getting a bit bigger here, and that means they're starting to bolt. So I'm going to chop off a significant amount. Hopefully that'll extend their little grow period here before it gets too much hotter, and then I'll replace them with the starts that I have going inside. This is my first year attempting to preserve parsley. I've not dehydrated it before. I think it's one of those herbs, or at least this is what Mother says. It is one of those herbs that might do better actually in the dehydrator as opposed to hang drying. I'm also, just so you're aware, I'm cutting quite low on the stem, not just where the greenery is, so that these thick stems come off and hopefully cause the plant to continue to bush out. And I think it will, because there's a lot of new growth down here at the bottom, so I think we'll get another harvest off of these overwintered parsley. Those are some pretty baskets, if you ask me. Harvesting is so excited. This is technically our first harvest of the 2023 growing season. I'll give you a quick look at how much we're leaving on the plant, so hopefully they will continue to grow for us. We got some sage here as well that's starting to flower. This is bergamot. It's a little wilty from the sun. As am I, bergamot. As am I. Let's head inside and see what we can do to get these dried and put up for later enjoyment. Oh, actually, I have plants out here hardening off. That looks sad, so maybe we'll have to put those in the greenhouse first. This is what happens. This is why you don't come outside during the heat of the day, because you get distracted and then you've been outside for an additional 3 hours and you're hot and tired. All right, herbs can wait just 2 seconds while we rescue some wilting plants that are supposed to be hardening off, but look a little tired. Our Our tomatillos and pepper starts are holding up pretty good in the heat, but I still am going to bring them in. This is only their second day out in sunshine. Inside we go to load up this dehydrator. Come on, Rip. The reason I have pulled out the dehydrator in the first place is to actually dehydrate some mushrooms I purchased the other day at the store. I've never dehydrated mushrooms before, but I got these for 30% off. They were on clearance because they're aged. And I'm not hugely up to date on the state of the world because quite frankly it overwhelms me and I just avoid looking into it. But getting something for 30% off just because it's close to its end of life to me is like a creative challenge. First of all, I'm saving money. Second of all, I get mushrooms. And third of all, I have to be creative enough to figure out how to use them, not waste them, and enjoy them. So it's something I have come to view as a challenge, a creative problem-solving task. So I'm excited to try dehydrating the mushrooms. I've had dehydrated mushrooms before, usually like gourmet blends that I purchase, and I often use them in soups, which is lovely because my mother and I have really enjoyed Asian-inspired soups lately. Things like pho, ramen, basically a really nice crisp and clear broth with whatever assorted vegetables we get our hands on, usually bits and pieces from the garden if we are just coming in or coming out of harvest periods. Those 1 or 2 beans that you can harvest off of a plant long before you have enough for an entire side of green beans. Those are perfect in those types of soups. Also, the soups are so easy. It's just chicken broth or whatever broth you have. You can even purchase pre-packaged faux broths, which, while they're not as good as the originals, are good enough of a base that you can elaborate on them and expand them, and it's been something I've really enjoyed doing. So that's what I'm going to do with these mushrooms. We have quite a few of them. Before I start cutting into the mushrooms, however, I don't think I'm going to wash the parsley because it actually looks very clean, but the oregano kind of has hairs on it that can hang on to soil that splashes up onto the leaves while you're watering, for example. And I can see that some of them have some dirt. They also have, let's see if I can show you, they have these little bugs. We call them spit bugs. I do not know the actual term, but it looks like someone just spit on your plant, and it's like kind of white and bubbly, but I believe it's actually where these bugs lay their eggs. Oregano has quite a few of those spit bugs in there. I can't seem to find any, but they're there, and even the idea of them being there is enough to make me need to wash these. I got this little harvest basket. It's very neat. Let me show you. The sides expand. See that? The sides expand so it can bridge the gap in your sink, and there are holes on the bottom. I don't know if I can do this without losing my oregano. Whooshoo! Holes on the bottom so the water drains out. I don't use this to wash all of my harvest, but it's nice when you're doing something like this just to have the water running. I'm just going to rinse them off. I'm not soaking them in anything. There's really not a lot of bugs right now because it's so early in spring. Just those spit bugs, and they wash off very easily with water. Once the oregano has been rinsed, I'm going to toss it in a salad spinner, and then after it's out of the salad spinner, I'll lay it flat just on a tea towel to get the majority of the moisture out before I take the leaves off of the stem and then put them in the dehydrator. I don't need that much water. As you can see, they're really not that dirty. There's just the littlest bit of almost dust, just some splashback from the soil. Don't want to fill this up too much because I want there to be enough room to have that centrifugal force the liquid to the outside of the container. So that'll be about it for the first round. too crazy. They can be a bit damp. I just don't want them soaking wet from the rinse. Oh, there's the tiniest snail. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so cute. Oh my goodness, can you see? I don't think my camera's gonna focus, but he's there, and he's adorable. All right, so the oregano has been rinsed, spun, and is now out to air dry. I'm going to get into slicing these mushrooms and getting them on the dehydrator. We have this round dehydrator, and this is what the racks look like. If I manage to slice the mushrooms thick enough, I think it'll be fine on here. I'm actually going to sit down while I do this because I have been having some lower back and hip issues. So why stand when you can sit? Why sit when you can lay? I went through and I rinsed these mushrooms and cut off any remotely moldy parts that were starting to form. I think I'm going to chop them about that thick. That way when they dehydrate, they're still meaty and not at risk of disintegrating. Of course, I will show you all another video of when, oh my goodness, don't look at my knife skills, that was horrific. I will update you on how these go. I'm sure they're going to be delicious. How hard can it be? I'll just make sure that I dehydrate them really well so that there's no residual moisture. Keep them thick enough so they don't crumble or break apart too easily. And that sounds perfect, right? Right. It's something new for me to have you all in the kitchen with me. I think I've done one, maybe two videos where I have you in the kitchen and I'm showing and sharing what I'm doing with you all. But it seems like an important thing to share because that's sort of why I do all that I do in the garden. Because I like food. My mother is an incredible cook and she really taught my brother and I the value of good food and the joy of good food. More than the value, because I think enjoying eating good food is what can give you the motivation to build an entire homestead. So she really made food fun for us, and that has sort of given me some motivation, courage to step into the kitchen with you all and share with you how I do things. It's a little nerve-wracking because there's multiple ways to do things. And of course, people on the internet have many opinions. So be gentle with me as I get used to filming inside, explaining what I'm doing. If I want to get really vulnerable and transparent with you all, as a younger child, I used to make my mom pretend to have cooking shows with me, where we would be in the kitchen making dinner or breakfast or whatever meal, or baking, especially baking. And I would make her narrate with me to the audience, to the camera, that was non-existent at the time, what we were doing, what we were making. So this is a little bit of a full circle moment for me. And I'm sure if Mother was home right now, she would love regaling you all with those stories. Especially because I was quite the director. I had an artistic vision, and if you strayed from it, 4-year-old Melanie would certainly let you know. So I am simply placing the mushrooms around the rack in no particular order, trying to give them enough space that the air can circulate around them. I will continue to chop until all of these mushrooms are done. I think we'll probably, my guess, to get through all of these, we'll probably have about 2.5 to 3 racks, depending on how tight I get them. Looks like I was exactly correct. 1, 2, and then those ones are quite full, and this one is just loosely filled. So 2.5 trays for the mushrooms. Parsley. Parsley smells delicious. I might take just a few pieces out to have for fresh eating. I know I left some in the garden, but it's nice just to have this in a cold cold water in a mason jar right next to the cutting board, so you can just freely add it and use it fresh as well. So I'm going to get a mason jar, fill it up with cold water, and put just some of the parsley and the oregano in there just to have for the next day or two. And then I'll go back to actually harvesting it from outside, because I was going to call myself lazy, but I'm not lazy. I'm efficient. Having it close at hand means you're going to use it. That's the whole principle and concept around things like salad gardens or cottage gardens, even where you have herbs and flowers mixed in together. It's because the closer it is, the more likelihood you will use it. So it's not just me, it's human psychology. There, that'll be good for the next couple days. We'll start getting this parsley on trays, and we're almost loaded. We have a few options when it comes to tray covers. These ones are completely solid. This is like if you're doing something that's like liquid, or we'll do our tomatoes on here sometimes if they're very juicy. I'm going to start using just this. It's like a silicone mat that just makes the hold smaller and still allows a lot of air through. I'll use those until I run out, and if I have to, I will use these solid trays. I'm just going to be pinching off where the leaf starts. With parsley, it usually gets kind of crumbled up or ground up or mixed into, say, a seasoning salt or some type of dry rub. So if there's a little bit of that stem in there, it is of no consequence to me. This should go quickly. Just keeping my colander here for my stems, because that, of course, will all go to the compost. I think I'm going to load these trays up quite a bit, because I have a lot of oregano to get in here and only so many of these little mat covers that make the holes smaller, but also because parsley is so light and fluffy that I think the air should have no problem getting in and around the leaves. It's not like it's a tomato where there's a lot of moisture and it's really dense. This is so fluffy. Holy smokes, we have 3 pretty full trays. Ooh, this got bunched up. 3 pretty full trays of the curly leaf parsley. We only have 2 trays left, which means we're not going to be able to do all of the oregano in one go, but we'll get as much in here as we can, and we'll just have to switch it over. This is a lot of oregano. It's quite dry though, still a little wet, especially at the tips where the leaves are closer together, but that's fine. The dehydrator will take care of that in no time at all. Oh, I'll show you here. I did just take some of the parsley and oregano and put them in a mason jar full of water. Keep that for fresh use. One thing I think is very important to be well aware of if you get into homesteading or gardening, minus the springtime, most of your efforts kind of culminate in the kitchen without a doubt. So you have to either like cooking or be very willing to learn. There are so many incredible resources, YouTube, Pinterest, there are recipes and walkthroughs and guides that, as long as you have a heart and a head to learn, and you're willing, which is the most important part, then you really can get creative in the kitchen. Like I mentioned, I was very fortunate to be raised with the mother I was raised by, because she taught us just a lot of fundamentals and instilled that joy in us around our food, which eventually led me to where I am today. So thanks, Mom. She and I live on the same property, so she also reaps the reward of my newfound, last 4 years of me being hyper interested in the garden. She also has gotten to share that with me, including the harvests. So, also the work, unfortunately. Can't have one without the other. Yeah, we're definitely going to need to do another round. Okay, my friends, the dehydrator is fully loaded. 2 trays of oregano, 3 trays of curly leaf parsley, and 2.5 trays of mushrooms ready to dehydrate. I still have all of this oregano. We'll probably end up hang drying some of it. I'll use the same method I did in my previous oregano video that is going to be linked in the cards if you want to check that out. I'll also probably take about half of it take it off of the stems and just lay it flat on a cookie sheet, and I'll pop that on the dehydrator once I get some more room, or once this is done completely and I get a whole other round going. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I know it's a bit of a different video. We aren't usually in the kitchen, but I had this project going, and like I said, I'm trying to pick the camera up and chat with you more frequently, especially during the beginning of these very busy spring months. As always, may the force be with you. I will see you all back here very shortly with another video. Bye-bye.